The moment you walked into that Thanksgiving dinner, you could feel something was off even before a single word was spoken. The air inside the rented glass-walled lake house felt heavy, almost suffocating, and it wasn't just because of the oven. Working overtime in the kitchen, there was a tension sitting quietly at the table, waiting for the right moment to rise. My son-in-law Andrew was already seated at the head, casually swirling his wine like he owned not just the house, but everyone in it. He scanned the table slowly, like a man measuring his importance through the silence of others, until his gaze finally landed on me. There was something sharp in his eyes, something cold and familiar, the kind of look he reserved for special occasions when there was an audience. "So, Catherine," he said, his voice loud and cutting, carrying just enough to make sure everyone heard him clearly, even the neighbors if they were close enough. Then came the question he had been waiting to ask, the one wrapped in mockery: "When will you get a real job?" The words landed hard, and just like that, the table fell into complete silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just quiet the room, it presses down on it. My daughter Jessica lowered her eyes immediately, pretending to focus on her plate as if the turkey suddenly required deep attention. Around the table, there were small nods, awkward shifts, people silently agreeing just to avoid being noticed. Everyone moved in the same direction except me. I didn't react the way he expected. I didn't flinch, didn't look away, didn't try to soften the moment. Instead, I let a small, calm smile form on my face, steady and unbothered. Then I answered, my voice even and clear: "Right after I fire you from yours." The effect was instant. His fork slipped from his hand and clattered against the plate, breaking the silence in a way no one else dared to. Andrew let out a laugh. But it wasn't real laughter, it came out sharp and forced, like a bark that stopped halfway. His eyes moved quickly around the table, searching for anyone to confirm that this was just a joke. Something harmless. "Okay, Mom," he said, dabbing his mouth with a napkin that probably cost more than a week of groceries. "That was good. Really, you almost had me there for a brief second." He leaned back and tapped his temple, playing it off for the room, as if signaling that maybe I had lost touch with reality. A harmless little gesture, meant to turn the attention away from him and back onto me. A senior moment. That's what he wanted them to believe. Jessica let out a nervous laugh, high and uncertain. "Mom, really," she said softly, her voice caught between embarrassment and fear. "Let's not do this today, just eat your turkey." But my fork stayed exactly where it was. I didn't move. Her words drifted past me without landing. My attention was fixed entirely on Andrew. Even blinking felt like it would give something away. And I had no intention of stepping back. I sat there quietly in my plain cotton dress, taking up space in a way that had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with presence. There's a certain kind of silence that happens right before something shifts, like in a boardroom. Before a takeover, it's thick, almost heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. I let that silence grow, stretching it across the table, filling every gap between the plates, the glasses, the uneasy glances. Slowly, I watched Andrew's expression change. The confidence in his smile began to crack. Just slightly at first, then more noticeably, the corner of his mouth twitched. He was waiting for me to laugh it off, to explain myself, to retreat, but I did in single quotes. Over the years, I've learned something simple about power. The louder someone tries to prove it, the less of it they usually have. Real strength doesn't need noise, it doesn't need attention. Andrew, on the other hand, had always been loud about everything: the car, the watch, the bonuses he talked about before they even arrived. It was all a performance, all carefully built to convince the world and maybe himself that he was worth something. But sitting there, looking at him, I didn't see a confident man. I saw someone trying very hard not to be exposed. "Mom," Jessica said again, a little sharper this time, "you're staring." "I'm not staring," I replied calmly, my voice quieter but firmer than before. "I'm evaluating." That word landed differently. Andrew shifted in his chair, the leather creaking loudly in the still room. "Evaluating what?" he asked, and for the first time, there was something missing from his tone. The smooth confidence was gone. In its place was uncertainty. "The asset," I said evenly, "and the liability." He frowned, confused, irritated, unsure whether to laugh or push back. He poured himself more wine, but his hand wasn't as steady as before. The glass clinked slightly, just enough to give him away. A small detail, but enough. "Look, Catherine," he said, leaning forward now, trying to reclaim control, trying to bring the moment back under his command. "I know holidays can be stressful, maybe you're tired. But let's not pretend you understand what I do. You haven't worked in, 20 years? Things have changed, have they?" I asked, picking up my glass of water and taking a slow, deliberate sip. "Math hasn't changed, profit and loss haven't changed, and consequences, those definitely haven't changed." The room felt tighter now, like the walls had moved closer. Even my grandson Austin had stopped looking at his phone for the first time that day. He was paying attention, watching closely. Andrew's patience snapped. His hand came down on the table, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make a point. Enough, he said. I paid for this place. I paid for this meal. I'm not going to be lectured by someone who can't even make a financial decision without overthinking it. He thought that would end it. That reminding me of what I didn't have would put me back where he believed I belonged instead. I glanced at my old wristwatch, the scratched glass catching a bit of light. The time was 11:55. You're right, Andrew, I said quietly. You paid for the food. Enjoy it. It's the last meal you'll eat as a free man. Then I leaned back slightly, letting the silence settle again, just as heavy as before. Just as deliberate. At Thanksgiving, the air in the rented glass-walled lake house was stifling. And not just from the heat of the oven. If I hadn't been the one who signed the audit request that flagged the transfer 3 days ago, I might have even believed him. I'm not imagining the Swift code, Andrew, I said coolly. Stop it, Jessica snapped, her voice cracking. Just stop it, Mom, you're ruining everything. She can't help it, Jess, Andrew said, reaching over to pat her hand. It's the progression. We knew this was coming. He took a sip of wine, his confidence fully restored. He had found his angle. He wasn't a fraudster being exposed. He was a saintly son-in-law dealing with a senile elder. He leaned back, unbuttoning his suit jacket. Actually, Catherine, this outburst, it clarifies things. Jessica and I have been having some hard conversations about your living situation. The room went still again, but this time the silence wasn't electric, it was suffocating. We've been looking at the budget, Andrew continued, his eyes hard and flat, and frankly, supporting you isn't sustainable. Not with the baby starting private school next year. We can't keep carrying you. Carrying me? The woman who paid off their credit cards in 2019. The woman who secretly funded the down payment on their first house. So he said. We found a place, Shady Pines, or whatever it's called. It's state-funded, basic, sure, you'll have a roommate, but it's safe and frankly it's all we can afford for you. He paused for a fact. Letting the cruelty sink in. We're moving up the timeline, he added. Day, we'll pack up your apartment. You don't need all that junk. Anyway, I looked at my grandson. Austin, he was 15. The age where boys usually only care about video games and avoiding eye contact. But he wasn't. Looking at his phone, he was staring at his father with an expression I recognized. It wasn't anger, it was shame. He was watching his father bully an old woman. And for the first time, he was seeing the man behind the Rolex. Andrew thought he was displaying strength. He was actually displaying rot. You're putting me in a state home, I repeated, keeping my voice neutral to save money. It's for your own good, Andrew said, cutting into his turkey. You need supervision. Clearly, I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel betrayed. Those emotions belong to families, and as far as I was concerned, this man was no longer family. He was a bad investment that needed to be liquidated. I see, I said. Monday, Andrew confirmed, chewing with his mouth slightly open. So let's just have a nice dinner, okay? No more stories out secret bank accounts. I picked up my napkin and dabbed the corners of my mouth. I folded it neatly into a square and placed it beside my plate. It was a signal I used to give in board meetings. It meant the negotiation is over, the execution begins. You're right, Andrew, I said, pushing my chair back. We shouldn't talk about secret accounts. We should talk about public ones. I placed my fork down. I picked up my linen napkin and wiped my mouth once firmly. Then I folded the napkin into a perfect square and set it beside my plate. In my world, in the boardroom on the 45th floor of the Chen Global building, this gesture has a specific meaning. My board of directors knows it well. It signals that the social portion of the meeting is concluded. It means we are done exchanging pleasant entries and are now moving to the execution phase, Andrew. I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had lost the soft rounded edges of a grandmother. It was now the flat metallic tone of a chairman addressing a junior executive. Sit down. He had started to rise, perhaps to usher me out. But the command froze him. He looked at me, blinking, trying to process the sudden shift in gravity. I turned to my grandson Austin. The boy looked up, startled. Unlock your phone, I instructed. Open your trading app. I know you have one. I saw you checking crypto prices during the appetizer. Mom, don't bother him, Jessica started, but Austin was already moving. He was intrigued. He sensed the energy shift, the way a dog senses a storm before the thunder rolls. Got it, Austin said, his thumb hovering over the screen. Search for ticker symbol CGV, I said. Chen Global Ventures. Andrew let out a snort of derision. Chen Global, Catherine, please. That's a multinational holding company. What are you doing? Pretending you bought a few shares with your social security check? Read the market cap, Austin, I said, ignoring Andrew entirely. Austin's eyes widened as the numbers loaded. He squinted, thinking he misread the decimal point. For .8 billion, he stammered. Grandma, it says for .88 billion, correct, I said. Now. Austin, scroll down to the recent news tab. Read the headline from this morning's press release. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Austin swallowed hard. Chen Global Ventures completes hostile acquisition of Apex Dynamics. Andrew's wine glass shattered. He hadn't thrown it, his hand had just gone numb. The glass slipped from his fingers, hitting the edge of his plate and exploding into a starburst of red wine and crystal shards. Red liquid dripped onto the white tablecloth, spreading like a gunshot wound. That's a lie, Andrew whispered. His face was gray. Apex is being bought by a private equity firm, the board told us. I am the private equity firm, I interrupted. I operate through 3 layers of shell companies because I prefer anonymity. But make no mistake, as of 9 o'clock this morning, I am the majority shareholder. I am the chairman of the board and I am the one reviewing your department's redundancy files. I lean back, resting my hands on the table. You see, Andrew, this is the mistake people like you always make. You confuse visibility with value. You think success is the part of the iceberg. You can see the part that sparkles in the sun. The cars, the watches, the noise. I gestured to the glass walls of the rental house, the symbol of his fragile, leased life. You spent your life polishing the 10% above the water. I spent 40 years building the 90% beneath it. The dangerous part, the part that sinks ships that aren't careful. I looked him dead in the eye. You called my consulting business little. It wasn't little. It was just submerged, and you just steered your entire career straight into it. Andrew stared at me, his face going through a rapid cycle of emotions. Shock, denial, and finally a desperate cornered anger. He stood up, knocking his chair back against the wall. The sound was violent, but I didn't flinch. I just watched him. The way a scientist watches a specimen under a microscope. You can't fire me, he spat, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. I have a contract. I have a golden parachute clause. If you terminate me without cause, you owe me to your salary plus stock options. You think you can just walk in here and play God because you bought some shares? I'll sue you for wrongful termination. I'll drag you in your little shell companies through court for years. He looked around the room seeking validation. Did you hear that? She's threatening me. This is harassment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Sit down, Andrew. No, he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. You don't tell me what to do in my house. You're bluffing. You're trying to scare me. You can't touch me without cause. I have cause, I said quietly. Incompetence isn't cause, he yelled. I hit my targets. I got my bonus. Yes, I agreed. You did get your bonus, $250,000, which you immediately used to put a deposit on a vacation home in Aspen. A bold move for a man with 3 maxed out credit cards. He froze. How do you? But here is the problem with that bonus, Andrew, I continued, smoothing the tablecloth with my hand. You didn't earn it. I picked up my phone and tapped the screen once. Check your email. What? Check your email. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He tapped the screen. The notification ping was loud and sharp in the silent room. That is a preliminary report from the forensic accounting team I sent into Apex Dynamics on Monday. I explained. They've been going through your department's books for the last 72 hours. Andrew's eyes scanned the document. I watched the blood drain from his face until he looked like a ghost. When we looked at the Q3 revenue numbers, you reported the numbers that triggered your bonus. We noticed something interesting. You booked revenue for 3 major contracts that haven't been signed yet. You inflated the projections to hit your threshold, collected the cash, and hoped you could close the deals before the audit at the end of the year. Jessica gasped. Andrew, what is she talking about? He didn't answer. He couldn't speak. He was reading the section of the PDF that outlined the potential legal consequences. That's not just bad management, Andrew, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. That is corporate fraud. That is embezzlement. And under the terms of your employment contract, Section 12, Paragraph 4, to be exact, it is grounds for immediate termination with 0 severance. I took a sip of water and I added, it is also grounds for criminal prosecution. He looked up at me. Then the arrogance was gone. The king of the castle was gone. All that was left was a terrified little boy realizing he had broken something he couldn't fix. You wouldn't, he stammered. I'm family. Family? I repeated the word, tasting it. Family is the people you protect. You were planning to put me in a state facility to save for $1,000 a month. You were planning to erase me. I stood up. I'm not filing charges yet, I said. But the SEC usually takes a dim view of insider trading and revenue manipulation. Whether they find out depends entirely on what you do in the next 5 minutes. Andrew looked at the timer on my phone. He looked at Jessica, who was weeping silently into her napkin. Then he looked at the ceiling as if hoping for divine intervention. When he looked back at me, the predator was gone. All that was left was prey. Mom, he croaked, his voice cracking. Please, you can't do this. The investigation, if that gets out, I'll be blacklisted. I'll never work in this industry again. Think of the family. Think of your grandchildren. If I lose this job, we lose the house, we lose everything. You lost the house 6 months ago, Andrew, I said, checking my watch. You just haven't admitted it yet. I tapped the screen. Siri, call Robert. No. Andrew lunged across the table but stopped short of grabbing the phone. Don't, Catherine, I'm begging you. The line connected. Margaret, happy Thanksgiving. Hello, Robert. I said, my voice steady. I'm confirming the termination of the VP of Operations at Apex. Effective immediately. Authorization code 7 Alpha Zulu. And Robert, forward the forensic audit to the SEC compliance officer. Let them decide how to proceed. Understood, Robert said. Done. I hung up. Andrew slumped back in his chair, breathing hard, his face a mask of ruin. He stared at me with pure unadulterated hatred. You be, he whispered. Then he screamed it. You vindictive old bee. Get out of my house right now. Take your old car and your cheap dress and get the hell off my property. I stood up slowly. I picked up my purse from the floor. Actually, Andrew, I said, pulling a folded document from the side pocket about the property. I tossed the paper onto the table. It landed right next to the puddle of spilled wine. I know you've been renting this place for the holidays to show off, I said. But the landlord listed it for sale 3 months ago. You didn't know because you don't read the real estate section. You only read your own press clippings. Andrew stared at the paper. It was a deed of sale. I bought it this morning, I said. Cash offer, 30-day closing. But immediate occupancy rights were transferred at noon. I smoothed my dress. So, technically, I said, looking around the room with a critical eye, you are screaming at your landlord. And since you just threatened me, I'm exercising the immediate eviction clause for tenant misconduct. You have 1 hour to vacate. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a kingdom collapsing. Turning to my grandson, I noticed he was still holding his phone. Looking from his father to me, Austin, I said, I'm leaving. I have a dinner to get to at the downtown office. My employees, my actual team are waiting. We're celebrating a very successful acquisition. I paused. If you want to learn how to build things instead of just pretending to own them, there's a seat in the car for you. If not, good luck with the eviction. Austin didn't hesitate. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked around the table. He didn't look at his father. He stood next to me. I looked at Jessica one last time. She was still crying, unable to move, paralyzed by the husband she had chosen. I left the deed in your name, Jessica, I said softly. It's a trust asset. He can't touch it. But you have to decide if you want to live in a house owned by your mother or build a life of your own. The front door opened to cool autumn air. Feeling like freedom on my face, I walked to my vintage Mercedes, the one Andrew had mocked for 5 years. Opening the heavy door, I slid into the leather seat. Austin got in the passenger side. He buckled his seatbelt, looking straight ahead. Where to, Grandma? He asked. To the office, I said, starting the engine. It purred like a lion. And Austin, call me chairman, as we pulled out of the driveway. Leaving the shouting and the chaos in the rearview mirror, guilt didn't register. Sadness was an overhead cost I just eliminated. I felt lighter. Sometimes you have to prune the dead branches so the tree can survive. If you've ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save your own peace, tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to share this if you believe respect is earned, not given.